We have so much to cover today. We've got Shien and Temu. We've got the Joburg mayor. We also have a lot of different things that people are saying about Johannesburg on Twitter. And we also have what the ANC is proposing that they want to do in Johannesburg. We also have some good news. Petrol prices are going down. We've got a lot to discuss today. If you are here, mark the register and let me know that you're here. Now, we've all heard of Shien. Some say Shien. Some say Temu. Some say Temu. I've heard of people call it all sorts of things, but they're taking quite a big market share all around the world. But even in South Africa, the owner of Temu has become the richest man in China. And in South Africa, it seems that there is a war and people are complaining. Let's try and find out what is going on with Temu.
Have you been inundated with offers from Shien and Temu? Their prices sometimes seem too good to be true. Well, it may be because how they deal with tax and customs duties. The Chinese online retailers are being accused of cheating the system by breaking up large orders to pay lower fees. They are now set to face new tax regulations. The National Clothing Retail Federation says the playing field should be fair for all players.
There was an exemption and exception made. I suppose, to be fair, it may have been a very clever maneuver. What we don't know, of course, is, and I'm certainly not accusing anyone, but if a parcel was inappropriately subdivided into smaller quantums in order to, essentially it's about 500 rand that gets exempted. If a parcel was cut up into smaller parcels then it is a cheating of the system. When the costing should have been a little bit more than that, and the duty should have been more. We don't know exactly how the system works with the clearing agents, but what we do know, and we've tested the system with our own purchases a number of times, is that often it wasn't in fact the 45% plus 15%. And Sars can explain a better, I think, where exactly it slipped through the cracks. Well, we don't think we don't think July is gonna be spectacular for any rhyme or reason. But what we do know now is that with the certainty of a level playing field, we can continue our ambitions in the master plan. We've already transitioned from some 30-odd% local for master plan retailers to in the mid 40% local in the master plan retailers. We can continue to implement.
So there you have it. People are complaining, saying that Shien and Temu are taking their market share. And what Sars is doing is Sars introducing a new tax measure on Shien and Temu next month. And if you read here, the South African Reserve, Sars has announced a new tax changes to the customs import system that clicks into effect on September 1st, which will affect Chinese e-retailers, Shien and Temu, among other. Sars plans to introduce VAT in addition to the current 20% flat rate customs duty by September 1st as immediate interim measure. The South African International E-Commerce Association said the early implementation on September 1st did not leave much time for adjustment and streamlining of processes. When local retailers import clothing, they pay a 45% import tax. The government feels it's only fair that importing customer, who is now effectively bypassing the middleman, the local retailers, also faces a import tax to level the competitive playground. Imports from online retailers increased from around 19 million in January 2022 to, listen to this, 120 million in December 2023, a significant 539 increase over a 2-year period, according to XA Global Trade Advisors. Now, what is going on here? What's happening is that people are finding goods online. And this is happening all around the world. You know, South African retailers have never really understood the online place. And they've never moved at a fast rate. You find that many retailers in South Africa don't even have online stores. And now what Temu and Shien is doing is many of you are seeing these adverts and you're buying stuff online from them. And what happens to South African retailers is that they actually don't have that market share. And people stop actually going to buy things and they start buying them online. But this is the interesting thing that I find about the situation, is that the same South African retailers that are complaining are also importing their clothing. They're not manufacturing them in South Africa. And it's about South African retailers that are importing their clothing versus Chinese retailers that are also importing their clothing. And this is what I want to say. I believe that the tax regime should be created to discourage companies from importing clothing. We should be reviving our textile industry in South Africa. So the measures that they're putting and increasing the tax for Shein, I mean, it's not going to change much because South African retailers have already been doing that. We've been wearing imported clothes. They just take the clothes from the factories that make it in China and they put their Edgars or they put their whatever the stamp is. And South Africans think, okay, this is something made in South Africa, but it's not. And the argument here is to say we need to protect locally made clothing. It needs to be expensive when you want to buy clothes from outside. It needs to be cheaper for you to go to your tailor, to go to your designer, to go to a South African store, David Lale, Matosa, many of them are there, and buy stuff there. And I believe this is the right direction that should be taken. So there is a war out there. I want to know from you guys, have you bought from Shein? Have you bought from Temu? Now, I have bought from Shein because I wanted to test it and see how it works. The sizes were wrong. It took too long to arrive. But the stuff that did fit, I was very impressed at the fact that they got the costs to be so low. So it's something that I found to be interesting to say, how do they get costs to be so low? How exactly are they getting it right? But what are your thoughts regarding this? Now, there's a lot of noise going on Twitter. There are people on Twitter that are saying that now Seoul authorities find toxic substances in Shein and Temu products. So when I saw this, I thought, hey, is this now an attack on these things? But listen to this.
In the most recent inspection by Seoul officials, 144 products from Shein, AliExpress, and Temu were tested, and multiple products from the companies failed to meet legal standards. This led authorities to call for the removal of products from their website after confirming that some items contain toxic substances, according to a government statement. Shoes from Shein were found to contain significantly high levels of phthalates, which are chemicals used to make plastic more flexible, with one pair 229 times above the legal limit. 2 bottles of nail polish from Shein were found to have dioxane, a possible human carcinogenic that can cause liver poisoning, at levels more than 3.6 times the allowed limit, and methanol concentrations that are 1.4 times above the acceptable level. The Seoul metropolitan government will continue to conduct safety tests periodically and disclose the results. Similarly, the European Union added Shein to its list of digital firms that are big enough to come under stricter safety rules, which include measures to protect customers from unsafe products.
There you have it. So we're seeing a world where people are saying Shein and Temu are taking over. Governments are now saying we need to regulate them more, we need to check them out more. But the big question remains, South Africa. The strategy should be to boost local manufacturing, not just focusing on closing them down. Because let me tell you what begins to happen, and this is the truth of the matter, is that the more we focus on closing down Shein, closing down Temu, do you know what happens? People find creative ways to bring in those clothes. They open up stores. They now sell them. We all know that these things happen on the black market. What government should be focusing on, and this is a shame that they haven't yet even began to focus on this, is reviving the textile industry in South Africa. We used to produce so many clothes in our country. Why are we not reviving that industry and making it something worthwhile in our country? Why is it that we have to now be plotting around to try and fix this mess when these things should have already been thought of? So what are your thoughts regarding this? I want to know from you, what are you thinking regarding this? There's a lot of articles coming up. Multiple Shein and Temu products contain toxic chemicals, authorities find. Is this going to stop you from buying the chemicals? Is this buying the products that contain these chemicals? What are your thoughts? Now, here's the thing. You've got majority of young people unemployed in South Africa. Youth, if the right environment exists for them to get involved in creating clothing, textiles, and we must never believe the lie that our youth are unskilled. There are people that have been doing so. We do have designers in this country like Matosa, like David Lale, and Rich Mnisi. The list goes on, where they make clothes in South Africa and people buy them all around the world. So we do have the ability to do so. Why is government not doing this? And this is the big qualm that we've got with government to say, when people are unemployed, government is just thinking of taxing these companies more. They are not thinking correctly. The right type of thinking that we need at the moment is to say, open up industries in South Africa so that young people can create clothing, because we've got a lot of talent in this country, instead of us just trying to increase taxes to stop people from buying from Shein, buying from Temu, because I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know. I mean, the Chinese have invested in making sure that their people are able to manufacture these goods. I think that they're just going to lower the costs and absorb the costs of the taxes. But what would be an instrument that would change our country is if young people were in power. Now, Johannesburg, there's a lot happening in the biggest city in Africa. And Johannesburg is really supposed to be a world-class city. You know, when people talk about America, they talk about New York City more than they talk about America. And the reason why a lot of people talk about New York City is because the city is what drives in people to come in and invest, drives in people to, the billionaires that work on Wall Street and own on Wall Street, because there's a city for them. Even if something is going wrong in another place in America, many of them will still say, you know what, in New York City, there is a city. And Johannesburg, it's supposed to be that for Africa. But unfortunately, we are seeing...
In the meeting, Al Jamaa presented to us the resignation letter of the Executive Mayor of Johannesburg, Councillor Thapelo Ahmed. After lengthy deliberation and consultations, the Government of Local Unity accepted the resignation letter of our Executive Mayor. We want to reaffirm that the Government of Local Unity in Johannesburg remains intact and will defend motions against the Speaker and the Chief Whip.
And this has nothing to do with the public opinion on my ability to lead. Secondary to that, of course, the 9...
So, yeah, Johannesburg continues to have so many issues. Dada tipped to be new mayor as Kabelo resigns. So, Kabelo's departure will pave way for the ANC's regional chairperson, who's been tipped for the position. His candidature is expected to be made official by the party's regional executive committee on Tuesday afternoon. Johannesburg executive mayor from Al Jamaa Party has finally bowed to civil society and political pressure and tendered his resignation to the Speaker of Council, Margaret, on Tuesday morning. Calls for his resignation or axing have recently intensified, with opposition parties and civil society organizations arguing that his tenure had been marred by unmitigated failure and that he was simply not qualified to lead the largest metro. In a brief statement, Gwamande said the decision to resign was in line with the political engagements that had taken place in recent weeks following significant changes in the country's political landscape brought by the outcomes of the 29 May election. The city, with a population of more than 6 million people, faces myriad challenges, including fiscal pressures, crumbling infrastructure, revenue collection problems, as well as severe delivery challenges, including the provision of electricity and potable water. As the youngest mayor of Johannesburg, I'm humbled by the opportunity to have led this city and stabilized it financially, administratively, following the collapse of the multi-party government. Now, there's a lot going on in Johannesburg, and there's a tweet that came out by a social media account known as Gulam, which is a controversial social media account. As many of you know, we discuss in this channel. We don't know who owns it, but recently Lindiwe Sisulu, who was a former minister in the ANC and is an NEC member of the ANC, she came out and she revealed that she did an investigation on this Twitter account, and she found that this Twitter account was the reason why she actually did not win or was not able to win the ANC election where she was running for the ANC president. Now, it says here that drop everything and read about how ANC Johannesburg leaders have captured city of Johannesburg and its entities and looting the city. It says absolutely no hope for the city of Johannesburg. Mail and Guardian revealed jaw-dropping details of the capture of Johannesburg by senior ANC officials. A forensic report detailed 1.3 billion in corruption was covered by ANC Johannesburg leaders. Pick it up, and Johannesburg Water fully captured by senior ANC Johannesburg leaders appoint unqualified relatives into senior positions, and those relatives don't even apply for the jobs. A relative of the ANC regional secretary was given a job as chief operations officer of Johannesburg Water, netting 2.6 million a year and absolutely not qualified for the job. Do you see why Johannesburg is covering water issues? 300 general workers were hired. All of these workers are family and friends of senior staff and ANC officials. it is only senior positions, every single position, including lower levels jobs, are given to unqualified family and friends of the ANC. As the city is being looted dry by senior ANC Johannesburg officials, unqualified people are employed in hundreds, service delivery has collapsed, waste is not picked up for weeks on end, many parts of the city have no water for months, but these thugs continue looting. They just don't care. Now, as somebody who actually lives in the city of Johannesburg, I'm deeply concerned about the city of Johannesburg. Let's hear as to what the mayor actually said.
Now, Gwamanda says his decision to resign was political. He says when he took office, there were discussions that the ANC, which had the majority, should lead council.
The coalition had found itself in a stalemate last year in February. And as a result, they had requested that I hold the fort for the collective. Holding a fort meaning you are deployed, you need to make sure that you represent us well.
Yeah.
And
no, holding the fort assumes temporary measure. I didn't understand you to be saying that even the last time you were here, that you are just holding the fort, because everybody was saying, oh, this is an interim mayor, and so, but you never accepted that kind of thing. You're saying you are here to work, and I don't think you were expecting to be out of office before your end of term.
I agree with you. So the context in which I'm raising that issue is the fact that we, as the government of local unity, understand that we cannot govern in isolation of other political parties that would have to endorse any of the candidates to take the mayorship position. And it is on those bases, understanding that I do not have political power, firstly, I would have to serve at the behest of those that would elect me into a position that I need to lead. And that's what happened. But in addition to that, there were subsequent discussions that the ANC, as the political party that has the biggest number, should be the one that ascends into a position of mayorship. And those discussions will unfold later. And at the time, later meant between 2 and 3 months. But unfortunately, it couldn't happen, and it required for me to put my best foot forward.
Oh, any of you would understand this very important topic, because I think what I'm very concerned about is what Cyril Ramaphosa said in the opening of the NEC meeting that was recently held in the ANC. He said, if we don't take care of the metros, the people will be unforgiving. I don't understand it. How do you put somebody who's from a minority party as the mayor of the city, and the city is crumbling, breaking down, water's not being taken care of, all those issues that I've just read now? The people can see that some game is being played here. It's like they've put somebody who they want to do all sorts of things, illegal things, because they can remind them to say, I've put you there, so you can't speak anything, will remove you, so that the blame can go to, the person we had put. And this is the most concerning part about politics, because when people vote for you and you become a majority, you should be the one that leads with the coalition so that you can be judged on the fact that people gave you their majority. In the city of Johannesburg, the ANC does have the majority. But the way we've been seeing things move and happen, it would be like they took a back seat to allow Johannesburg to get to the stage. And now it's like they are seeing, okay, elections are going to be coming up. We didn't perform well. NEC of the ANC sat down and said, hey, these people are watching what we're doing. If load shedding was the reason why they didn't vote for us, they're definitely not going to vote for us in the city of Johannesburg, because they're not getting water, they're not getting service delivery. And now they are saying, go back and quickly fix it. And I think these are some of the issues that I've really got about politics, to say it's important that every single voter understands how politics works. That when you have a majority, the country or the onus is on you to make sure that the government works. It is your responsibility to lead the people. When you don't do that, the people are not supposed to say, it's the Joburg mayor that's causing all these issues. No, it's the ANC. Why? They had the majority. Why haven't they done something for such a long time? Why only now after elections are they waking up to doing this thing? The people must judge the party that is in the majority, the party they voted for. Because let's be honest, Al Jamaa does not have the majority. They never had the majority. I think if memory calls me well, I think they had about 1%, I think, or even less than 1%. And people are thinking, no, everybody's going to blame that. No, that's not the case. In a municipality, there are officials that are there that are supposed to be doing the work. And it's important that whoever you voted for, you are watching them right now to say, the person I deploy to represent me, what are they doing? What are the actions they're taking? How are they working for your vote? It's very important. Let us not be people that abscond when it comes to the responsibility of holding the people that you voted for accountable. And it's important to understand that coming to 2026, it's important to choose the right people in the right cities, because if we don't, we suffer these sort of things. Now, the ANC is saying that
The ANC has welcomed Joburg Mayor Kabelo Kwamanda's resignation today. The party has confirmed the nomination of Dada Murero as the new mayor. In 2022, Murero was elected mayor but served just 25 days before he was removed.
Regional Executive Committee of the ANC in Johannesburg, guided by the national officials as well as the provincial leadership, has resolved to forward our regional chairperson and the current MMC of Finance, Comrade Dada Murero, as our candidate for the position of the executive mayor. Comrade Dada Murero is of course not new to serve in this position. You will remember that in the year 2022, we have resolved as such, and the executive mayor was elected in 2022 September, and unfortunately due to court challenge, the court challenge reversed the election of the mayor. And that, of course, it made, when we came into this process, it made our life easier because we have already, dwelt with this process previously.
There you have it. You're hearing what the ANC is saying that they want to do. And for me, I go back to the point to say the people that should be held accountable here, what we're seeing in Johannesburg, we should be holding the parties that you voted for. The ones that had the majority, those should be the ones that are held accountable. We must never for a second think that Al Jamaa is the party that is ruling because they themselves voted for themselves. No, it was the parties that were there that voted them in. And it's important that we hold them accountable. Now, I said to somebody the other day that it's quite important for one to ask the question, to say, whoever I voted for, before, after they got into power, has there been a difference that I am able to see in the work that they're doing? And these things are important for us to be able to hold politicians accountable, because if there is no difference, politicians should know that the people are not seeing a tangible difference, and these people will not vote because of that. Now, we are seeing some good news that's coming out. The big petrol price cut is expected next month. The South African motorists are set for further relief, with data indicating there will be a fourth consecutive month of petrol price cuts in September. The Central Energy Fund, which tracks the price of oil and the dollar-rand exchange rate to forecast fuel prices in the future, expects there to be a significant over-recovery in the price of petrol and diesel. This is largely due to decline in oil prices as fears of an economic slowdown in the U.S. tempered demand. Declining oil prices have been partially offset by a stronger dollar as global uncertainty results in investors returning to the US dollar for safety, strengthening the greenback. Now, I don't just want to read financial news and not explain, and that's the reason why I'm making it a point to explain this. Now, as you can see, and maybe let's start here, because people don't understand how finances work. Everything is affected by the oil price. As long as whatever you use, wear, work with is something that you don't make in your own house, it's affected by the oil price. The bread you eat every morning, it must be delivered from the bakery to the store. The clothes you wear, they must come through something, whether it's a ship, whether it's a car, that's oil involved. When you go to work, there's oil involved there. So oil prices affect everything else. And how the economies of the world work at the moment is that the countries that have got oil, countries like Angola's got some good oil. Countries like the United Emirates, your Saudi Arabia's, they've got oil. These countries, they basically affect how other countries function because they control the oil. Now, whenever there's movements in oil, it means that movements in prices of everything is affected. Now, when you read this last statement here, and I think I want to just explain it so that everybody can understand, so that the financial news does not become something that passes you by. Declining oil prices have been partially offset by a stronger dollar as global uncertainty results in investors turning to the US dollar for safety, strengthening the greenback. So what usually happens is that when the dollar becomes quite strong, whenever the dollar becomes strong, you always find that there's a decline in oil prices. So this is largely due to a decline in oil prices as fears of an economic slowdown in the U.S. tempered demand. So whenever the United States, which is the biggest consumer of oil, whenever their economy slows down, it means that they'll be using less oil. And therefore, there'll be more oil in the market because the demand is now less for the oil. And as a result of that, the price of everything does go down. So whenever oil is in high demand, everybody's prices go up. Whenever oil is not in demand, our prices go down. And this is the reason why the Saudis, the Dubais have become so wealthy. Because they've come to understand that what they have, the whole world needs, and they've used or controlled it very sparingly to be able to grow their economies. Now, South Africa, we actually fall in the same place because there is oil that has been discovered off the coast in the waters of South Africa. But however, we see the deals moving dodgy. Certain people are getting them, certain people are. So there's lots of questions around that, and I've spoken about that. But not only that, we've got natural resources that other countries use. There's no car that's made without a piece of iron or chrome included, which we've got in South Africa. But our resources, when our resources, or because we don't control them, we are not able to move global markets because we don't control our own resources. We don't have reserves sitting of our own resources. We don't actually control our own natural resources. So we can never control the world like how the Saudis and all these other countries control the world because our natural resources have been shipped off. They're owned by foreigners. South Africans or Africans don't actually own their natural resources. And the way that economies build in the rest of the world is that they control their resources, and as a result of that, they control the rest of the world. Because what happens? Whenever their resource price changes, I mean, they can simply, and I'm not saying they do this, but I think they do, they can simply hold back production, slow down production, and price will increase because there's less oil in the market. They can increase production and price will decrease because there's more oil. There's so much they could do to build the economies. And these things don't happen in Africa because many of our mineral resources are just shipped off to other countries, and we're not actually able to control our economy. So one of the things we want to do on this show is educate and teach you so that come the 2026 elections, when you're voting, you understand how global economies work, how countries work, and you're voting correctly. You're voting for political parties that will assist you rebuild South Africa and rebuild Africa. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Remember, it helps us immensely when you leave a comment, when you share the video, and when you subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me, and see you very soon.